Black leaders upset about an attack on the bus. Crazy astronauts wearing diapers. And I restate my appeal for a boxing match with Mark Belling on the next Focus on Diversity, right here, right now.
Focus on Diversity with Troy Shaw.
And welcome to the program. I'm your host, Troy Shaw. Let's get into introducing our guests. We have Christopher Carter. He is a local businessman with CCI. He's actually president and CEO. We also have Steve Jagler. He is the editor of the Small Business Times. Also, Robert Miranda. He is the editor of the Milwaukee Spanish Journal. Gentlemen, thank you for being in our program here today. Let's get into it. Turner to pay for bomb scare. Last week, Turner Broadcasting Systems agreed to pay $2 million for a Cartoon Network advertising campaign that caused a widespread bomb scare. Over 36 blinking electronic signs with a boxy character giving an obscene hand gesture was found in Boston, and it was found in almost 9 other areas in a couple of other cities. Gentlemen, now, we've all seen a little bit of this thing here, and what this really gets to is whether or not, whether or not we are going overboard with national security. Robert, what do you think?
Hysteria in Boston. I mean, these guys had a lack of sense of humor. I mean, give me a break. You're gonna go.
I mean, but you got to admit, we were talking about cords and wires coming out of this thing. It looked like a bomb. I mean, Steve, for the most part, is that what you kind of like surmised it, or what?
To be honest with you, I didn't even know they still made light brights anymore. I think Hasbro or Mattel or whoever makes those things, that was the only winner out of this whole thing.
Well, you think about it. Good news, bad news, any news is good for the advertiser, of course. Now, what do you think? What do you think, Chris? We're talking about as a business owner. Do you do something like this?
I thought it was so far out there that it was great. I saw them. They were not bombs. They were a little character given the finger, and being PC correct. It was nowhere near bomb. This is a post 9/11 where all of a sudden somebody sees something that's out there, and apparently it was an older woman that had signed it in and called it in. It had some hysteria things going on. Police came rushing to all these different characters and started going ballistic on it. What is it? How? The man lost his job now.
Gentlemen, they blew one of them up. Robert, are we talking about the Homeland Security Department? Aren't they just going overboard, or is this just Bostonites being a little bit ignorant here?
Boston Police Department needs to go to some sensitivity training for joking around or understanding what a real bomb looks like. I mean, anybody with half a brain could have easily inspected this thing and saw that this is not a device for exploding, especially when they took it down and they saw, how this whole thing was made. Come on.
Well, Steve, as a person who runs, who actually editor of a company, small businesses. I mean, these were stuck on businesses as well, gentlemen. This wasn't necessarily something that you could say was completely innocent. Can you?
I think it's easy to sit here and make fun of the whole situation, but if I'm driving by or walking by and I see something like that under a bridge in this day and age, I can see where somebody might at least want it to be checked out.
Would you have called it? Would you have called it in?
I don't know.
That's your answer right there.
He doesn't know if he would be embarrassed enough to actually call it in.
But once it's called in, I could see where you got to follow through, and you don't know what you're dealing with. Cell phones can be turned into bombs these days.
Mm-hmm. Well, in our last show last week, we were talking about letter bombs. Yes. This is not that far gone. What do you think? This is not that far gone.
This is so far different than that. These were cartoonish characters, and everybody that saw these noticed it was a cartoon character. First police officer that showed up on the scene probably looked at it and thought, "Oh, that's kind of cute, but what is it?" And then they started going into it. The gentleman who approved it at Turner lost his job. This was just a publicity stunt for the Cartoon Network, not for the hysteria that is post 9/11.
Okay, well, let's move on to something a bit more serious here. Now we got poverty shifting to the suburbs. Currently, 38 million Americans live below the poverty line, which the federal government defines as an annual income of $20,000 or less for a family of four. But for the first time in history, more of Americans poor are living in the suburbs than cities, 1.2 million more according to the survey in 2005. We're talking about more people are living in poverty, underneath the poverty. Robert, is that just a trend of this this government? Is this Bush's legacy?
I think there are a number of factors here that are promoting this, and clearly, you know, the Bush administration's reallocating of funds that should be dealing with domestic issues to support an illegal war is one of them. Leaving families without any means of support. The other issue is how a lot of cities have been developing and a lot of individual families being attracted to the cities, moving back into the cities. And then with that, you have gentrification taking place and people moving out of the city, moving into the suburb areas. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there are a lot of differing factors, but it is interesting that, you know, here in Milwaukee, we have an example of that. You know, up in the Northridge area, you have this huge population of folks who are moving in the area, and you see poverty increasing out there, where you see in Brewers Hill and other areas here in Milwaukee, where they used to be poverty zones, are now experiencing an economic growth.
You know, Robert sometimes can't help himself but making some jabs at the president, you know, illegal war, things of that nature, of course. But we're saying, we're looking at a trend. We have to admit, we are looking at a trend here of more people being impoverished. Steve, is that just a sign of the times now?
I think there's I agree with what Robert was saying, but I think there's also a straight out financial component to this. A lot of people in the lower middle class see other people as their peers driving around in SUVs and big new flat panel televisions and so forth. And a lot of them took adjustable rate mortgages when the rates were low, and then the rates shot up, and now they can't afford their house payment, and so they're falling into that trap. I think you're seeing a lot of that in the suburbs.
Well, as a business owner as well, Chris, I mean, we're seeing that kind of trend happening here in America. And, you know, Robert loves to blame the president. What do you blame it on?
I blame it on several factors. You look at a couple of years ago, everybody started refinancing. They were giving home loans to anybody and everybody that had a job. You also look at the regards to the buildup of Section 8 types of housing that's out there in regards to the suburbs. Now, I know specifically out in certain areas, they built a very large complex, and individuals were asked, would you like to come and have brand new style home? And all you have to pay is $200 in rent because it is a Section 8. So there are different components within the financials and the structure that people are moving. Plus the education is better out in the suburbs per se than it is in MPS. Families want to move their children to the suburbs because they perceive that, such as like the Whitnell school districts in Franklin and such, and they have that affordable housing for them. So there's a dichotomy of different issues that are dealing with right there to push them out to the suburbs.
And when we come back, we're going to get even deeper into diversity. Stay with Focus on Diversity. We'll be right back.